exclusively just him. In the last lesson, we talked about Charles Darwin's influences, people who influence him to be who he is. Okay, his ideas, his theories, his hypothesis. Now, in this lesson, we will describe the conditions for natural selection and explain what evolutionary theory suggests about the unity and diversity of life, and which is based solely on Charles Darwin's idea. Okay, so let's start. So if you recall from the last lesson, I talked about artificial selection, right? Artificial selection is when humans, we pick certain traits that we like in a plant or an animal, and we breed them so that the animal or the plant would have those traits. So according to Charles Darwin, he believed that the world was just like that there was a natural scientific process that were picking and choosing certain traits that were better than others, more advantageous to the animal or the plants. And so, but he had to find out that a way to explain this natural process that's similar to artificial selection. So in 1858, okay, 1858. Now by this time, Charles Darwin, he was elderly already. He was an old guy because he was born in the early 1800s, right? So this is like almost, he was like 50 something years old. So he's an old man by now. And so he had been researching for 30, 40 years. And he knew a lot of people, a lot of scientists around Europe where he lived during that time. And there was one naturalist, his name is Wallace, A. Wallace, William Wallace, I think, or Alfred Wallace, okay, Alfred Wallace, A. Wallace, which is, yeah, William Wallace would be the guy from the movie The Lionheart, okay? No, this is Alfred Wallace, okay? So, a naturalist named Wallace, and Wallace published an article, an essay in the newspaper, and the theory that was used by Wallace was very similar to Charles Darwin. Very, very similar. And Wallace supported with a lot of evidence. So Charles Darwin read his essay, Wallace's essay, and he realized, oh no, if I don't publish anything or I don't write anything, all my years, decades of research will go down the drain because Wallace is going to beat me and he'll get credit for all these ideas. Okay? Now, the reason, and then as soon as he read that, within the next few days or few weeks, Charles Darwin published his book, his evidence and his publications and all that stuff. And he titles it On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. But the real title is On the Origin of Species. But he calls it natural selection. Now, Wallace did not use the word natural selection. But his idea was very similar to Charles Darwin. Now, how long did Darwin wait? He had all this data, all this research, all this evidence from his research. And he waited more than 20 years to publish his first book called On the Origin of Species. Now, why did he wait so long? Number one, first reason was he was afraid of criticism by other researchers during that time. Now, this is in the 1800s, and there was a caste system where you are part of the group or you are the servants and the serfs, right? And Darwin, he was afraid to be excluded from that group. Now, during this time, he was very famous. He was famous, somewhat famous, and he enjoyed that notoriety. So he was afraid of losing that prestige. So because he saw Wallace publish the work, he was afraid to lose to Wallace or to lose credit. So he published his work. Now the second reason why he was afraid of publishing his work for 20 plus years, is because of the public. The book did not say the church, but it was the church. The church, the religion in Europe was mostly Christian and Catholics. And they do not believe in evolution. Religion does not believe in evolution at all, because Darwin's ideas were very radical for that time. And if he had published his work, his family would be exiled from that class, the affluent class. So Charles Darwin held back his work. Now, did he get credit for this? Yes, he did. He published it at the right time, because during this time there was a lot of controversy on science versus religion. Okay, so the book looks like this. This is what the cover of the book looks like. Okay, that's him. If you look at his picture, he looks like an old Santa Claus. He was old during this time. Okay, he lived into his 80s, close to 90 or something like that. Now, here's an old picture of him. This is what it looks like inside his book. Okay, he drew all these pictures of animals that he saw on his journey and after. Okay, these are the pictures of the finches on Galapagos Island. Okay, Galapagos Island that he drew. And they're all the same. They're all the same species, which are finches. So, after he published his book, people start reading it, and there was a lot of talk about his book, about his theories. Now, Darwin hypothesized, this is what he believed, that individuals with certain types of inherited variations are better suited and more adapted to life in the environment than others. So that means that if you have certain types of traits that are unique to that environment, you're more likely to survive, you're more likely to find food, you're more likely to reproduce. So because you reproduce, you pass on your DNA to your offspring passes on your DNA to their offspring, and it continues. And he said that these variations allows you to adapt to the environment, to your surrounding. Now, he gave a list of examples of these adaptations that he calls, that these variations that you should have. He includes it with such things as unique body parts or structure, bright colors, courtship behaviors. Some adaptations are not physiological, such as photosynthesis and animal hibernation. So he said these adaptations, some of these you can see, kind of like this flower. See this flower? Because of the shape, the color that it has, only certain species of birds, certain species of bugs, flying bugs, can get the nectar from the flower. If you don't have the right beak, you can't get it. Kind of like these penguins. They have the certain body shape which allows them to live in the Arctic. For them to survive in very hostile, windy, cold conditions, they have sugars. They have like an antifreeze inside of them, which allows them to survive in these environments. Like this guy, the iguana. These were the Galapagos iguana, and these iguana, they have a certain shape. They have certain skin structures, which allows them to live for a long, long time. And so not all of these traits, these adaptations that Darwin was talking about, that you can see, like the penguin, the iguana, and the flower. Some of these were inside traits that are, it has to do with photosynthesis. It has to do with hibernation. Those are not behavioral things, okay? Behavioral things. And he talked about how certain species are more successful than others because they have the correct or better courtship behavior. So things like this you cannot see. Okay? Maybe you have to observe them for a long time, but it's something, it's not like a shape or color, okay? But he said that he saw a variety of things, these adaptations, and it makes these species unique. That's how they were successful. So he calls these species who have these unique variations, he calls them fitness, okay? Fitness. Fitness describes how well an organism survives and reproduces in the environment. Now, he calls them, so he uses the phrase survival of the fittest. It doesn't mean that only the fittest, you see? if you look at the phrase, let me get my pen. Yeah, survival of the fittest. That's what he used in his book. Does it mean that only the fittest species survives? He said, no. It just means that there's a spectrum. certain species are better than others. Kind of like this. You see the beak of these birds here? They're all the same. Now, if all of these beaks, this bird looks like the beak looks pretty good. He can still eat the nectar from the flower. This guy can still do it too, but more success from this guy. Versus this guy would be the most fittest. This guy is the fittest because he has the longest beak and he is the best. But does it mean that only he would survive? According to Charles Darwin, he said no. This guy would survive, and this guy would survive too. And this guy might survive, and this guy is going to die, and this guy is going to die, and this one with the small beak would die too. Now, this one is the fittest, but does it mean that he would be the only? No. Other ones would survive, but so there is a spectrum of adaptations. There's a spectrum of fitness. Just because you're the fittest doesn't mean you're the only one that will survive. So other ones will be successful too because they have other adaptations which would allow them to be successful. Now then, Charles Darwin elaborated, and people wanted to know, do you have like a name for this idea that you have? He calls it, the scientific mechanism, he calls it natural selection. So he coined the word natural selection. Charles Darwin coined the word natural selection. And he didn't get it from anybody else, okay? I'm sure he got ideas from different people, but he calls it natural selection. I wonder if he got it from artificial selection. Remember that? Artificial selection. So he switched it with the word natural with artificial. So instead of using artificial, he replaced it with natural selection, which is a perfect phrase. So he calls this scientific natural mechanism natural selection. And it is the process by which organisms in nature with variations most suited to their local environment survive and reproduce. So he said that natural selection is based on 3 ideas. More individuals are born that can survive. So natural selection doesn't mean that you're the only one that can reproduce. You just happen to be consistent. You're able to reproduce, and your offspring are able to survive. Number 2, natural inheritable variations affect that ability to survive and reproduce. So having these certain traits, it allows you, because of its variation, it allows you to be just a little bit more successful than all the other species within your population. Makes you more fit. And so he said levels of fitness varies among individuals. So his third idea, levels of fitness, there's a hierarchy of fitness, meaning that some are super fit, some are medium fit, and then it trickles down until to the point where the species at the bottom here are not fit anymore. So here's a picture of grasshoppers in this area. Notice how this guy most likely he's gonna die soon because he stands out. This guy is gonna die soon because some bird's gonna kill him. Versus, notice how there's so many green. They can hide. They can camouflage themselves. So that's an example of what Charles Darwin is saying, that these grasshopper, they develop certain colors, certain traits, which allow them to be more successful. So these grasshoppers are more likely to reproduce and survive and continue. Just like this guy, right? This guy, if he looks at this cricket is going to die because it's not able to hide. So he is going to die. Just like these mice here, right? All the light color ones, these light color mice, they will all die. They will all die. Now, based on evolution, according to Charles Darwin's natural selection idea, over time, there's going to be less and less and less. And the population of other mice, the darker mice, will increase because they just have that one trait which makes them better than the others.